It's the start of another week of the impeachment investigation into U.S. President Donald Trump, and if last week was any indication, it will be eventful. As you may have heard on our show, America's top diplomat in Ukraine gave what has been called bombshell testimony last Tuesday, and the day after that, dozens of House Republicans stormed a secure committee room to protest the proceedings. Now, with more witnesses scheduled, Republicans continue to criticize the process as unfair and secret. Jeff Fortenberry is a Republican congressman from Nebraska. We reached him in Washington, D.C.
Congressman Fortenberry, how are congressional Republicans preparing for the possibility of an impeachment trial of your president?
Well, we're seriously concerned about the unfairness of this entire process. The impeachment inquiry is being held in the Secret Intelligence Committee. This is one of the most solemn acts that a member of Congress can ever undertake. And this whole process is frankly unprecedented. The last two impeachment trials of last century had certain precedents, and this incredulous process really is undermining the credibility of the House of Representatives, and this is a huge problem.
It seems to be that the reason for that, they say, the Democrats say, is that they're interviewing witnesses privately right now because they don't want the witnesses tailoring their testimony or corroborating the testimony with each other. So what's your response to that?
So the witnesses not tailoring their testimony to one another suggests that there is a fundamental entanglement with a political consideration, that they do not trust administration officials, and this is part of the sentiment. The animus toward the president is underlying the very motives for impeachment here, and actually it's undermining the credibility of the House of Representatives to be holding this in secret. Members like me who have top-secret clearances have trouble getting the fullness of information ourselves. So this is a problem at a lot of levels.
At the same time, we know that recently, it's been reported that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell did give a PowerPoint presentation, a preview of how an impeachment trial in your chamber would be conducted, and suggested that there could be articles of impeachment by your Thanksgiving, and the Senate could be with a trial of Mr. Trump, which would conclude possibly by Christmas. Do you think that's realistic?
I don't know. Carol, listen, I have an expression in my office. This is a complex, multi-layered issue with many cross-currents running in parallel. And so the impeachment process is got a political motive. There are realities of complexities dealing with the situation with Ukraine. Remember, this all started. It's good to take a little assessment of the timeline. Russia invades Ukraine. President Obama sends Ukraine aid with the approval of Congress, including myself. It's non-lethal aid. President Trump continues that policy, but both with lethal aid. But both President Obama and President Trump's administration, responding to the laws passed by Congress, have to do inquiries into whether or not Ukraine is making sufficient progress on corruption, which is very real. In fact, Ukrainian politicians have been in my own office, new members of their parliament who have been elected, young people who are filled with vigor and eager for reform. We've had the same hard conversation. You will get to the heart of this corruption in your society. You're not going to become a protectorate of the United States. So these are the motives, the primary motive here of trying to speak to the Ukrainians directly about the issue of corruption. It appears that Vice President Biden, when he was in office, had a quid pro quo, told the Ukrainians they weren't going to get the aid unless they did something. In the call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine, it does not appear there's a quid pro quo there. Ukraine got its aid. The Ukrainians didn't even know their aid was being withheld. And this is one of the facts that needs to be out there as people try to just objectively reason their way through this and disentangle it from any political motive directed at the president.
Okay, but among the witnesses, U.S. Ambassador to the European Union Gordon Sondland has said that he cautions he's not a lawyer, but he believes there was a quid pro quo. And we heard the much respected diplomat Bill Taylor, who describes what you're saying, that there is a foreign policy trajectory, but he said there was kind of an alternate trajectory, a behind-the-scenes trajectory that was being conducted mostly by Rudy Giuliani. Did you not have problems hearing that Mr. Giuliani may be running White House foreign policy when it comes to Ukraine?
Yes, that's honestly a complexity here. But all I'm looking at is the conversation between the president and the president of Ukraine. And then the full context of what everybody else is saying is not known to us, those of us who may have to take an impeachment vote by the way, which would then call for the trial in the Senate. That's how this works. It starts in the House.
But do you not have any concerns about what you're hearing, about what Mr. Giuliani has been up to, about this parallel foreign policy being run? I mean, whether it has parallels in other times in other administrations, does not give you pause?
The Giuliani consideration is a separate consideration, and of course that's disconcerting. I don't know exactly what he was doing, and many people don't know as well. If he was hired by the president to do some things for political purposes, that's another consideration. But the reality here is it's as though there is a conviction, and then we'll try to convict people that it's correct. And this is upside down and backwards and not fair.
When you say that it's in secret, at the same time, though, within that the proceedings, there are, about 47 Republicans on the 3 committees who are taking part and asking questions. So the Republicans are in the room, are they not?
Republicans on relevant committees are in the room, but I tell you, I'm getting my news this morning from a national news talk show who is quoting Mark Meadows, who's in the room, who's trying to relay information back to Republicans in general. Is that really fair to me? A person who may have to take a vote on this? I've sent the committee themselves a letter asking to have access to all of these records. They deny that.
Is there at some point, how would you see it differently? If there is to be, this is to proceed, and it appears it's going to be, what do you want to be different?
Are you pressing Democrat colleagues on the same questions, by the way? I'd like to know. Because,
yes,
again,
actually.
I'm glad to hear that, because the media has a very important role here to actually promote the idea of both transparency and fairness.
But can I ask you again, what would you, you've said you want it done differently.
Why do I have to be an architect of an impeachment hearing? I mean, I think that's what you're asking.
But what would make it fair in your eyes?
Well, again, there's precedence for this based upon when you had a Republican Speaker of the House and a sitting Democrat president, and the roles were also reversed in last century.
And so that's your model that you would like to see them consider?
Well, that's a precedent, and it seems to have not undermined the credibility of the entire proceeding. Again, holding this in secret is actually diminishing the credibility of the proceeding itself in the House of Representatives.
I just want to clarify one thing earlier when I said that we had challenged Democrats. What we have done is to have people who are supportive of the process but feel, as you do, that they're supporting the Democrats, but they feel, as you do, that this is not the right way to do it, that they would like to see it more open.
Well, good. Then I chose well in choosing to speak to you today, because you're trying to be fair.
Mr. Trump has called Republicans who criticize him human scum. Does that kind of rhetoric make you reluctant to challenge him?
The president has a smack-down political style. He is a tough, brash New York businessman. I am a Nebraskan. We look to the end of the field and figure out how we're going to plow the row straight without a lot of drama. So just because you have a difference in style doesn't mean you can't be aligned around policy.
We'll leave it there, Mr. Fortenberry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was Jeff Fortenberry, a Republican member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Nebraska. He was in Washington, D.C.